Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is Kushalmehra. Uh, now, probably this is one subject for which I got the most emails, but I am the last one to do this discussion. Is because I just was not confident before because I had not read enough to even have good questions for this subject. There was a lot of talk in the last month and a half about ethanol blending in petrol, about the E20 brand, and I was just not confident enough. Also, if somebody looks at it from a pure clickbaity perspective, this is the worst time to do this discussion when nobody gives a damn about it. But I do, and I got the benefit of hindsight. I got to watch everything everyone else said, and I could learn from that. So I, as always, I reached out to my dear friend Kushan Mitra. Kushan is probably India's top automotive journalist. I mean, I think he is, but
No,
and
not
also the
top.
printer and
I would say not top, not top.
well, one of the best automotive journalists of India. It's
Okay,
okay, you're
top 10,
humble.
top 10, top 10. Yeah.
Yeah, and printer and publisher of the Pioneer. So, Abhi, look, I want to start, Kushan, by some baseline. So I always believe when we do these discussions, we start by a baseline assumption that maybe people don't know about the issue. So let's steelman the issue itself. What are the grouses? Like, what is E20 blending per se? What is ethanol blending? Why is it done? What are the potential complaints? So let's steelman all of that, and then maybe we can get into the
Okay.
other bits.
All right. So let me talk about it very simply. What is ethanol? As you all know, is you know C2H5OH, the stuff we can put in our systems with alcohol. It tastes very nice, but ethanol, as you know, if you've had some of the fancier cocktails at a nightclub or a bar, they can also catch as fire. So it burns. You produce ethanol or alcohol from grain, whiskey, some malt. You can produce it from a multitude of sources, and you can also be burnt. Now, you are mixing it with petrol because ethanol is cheaper, especially if you have a lot of biomass. Why ethanol blending is many countries did not have access to resources of petrol. Ethanol blending was something that was actually introduced by Brazil. Brazil, of course, has a lot of land, fertile land, grew a lot of sugarcane, and used the sugarcane to produce ethanol to run in their pumps. Again, ethanol blending helped Brazil because, again, while Brazil is a large country with very, very few roads and connectivity, so ethanol was locally done, helps. So in Brazil, a lot of cars can run up to 100% ethanol. So the entire auto industry in Brazil can, produces cars that can are called flex fuel cars. It can run up to blends of 100% ethanol. It's very rare to have 100% ethanol cars. There are some issues with ethanol, but 80% ethanol is standard in most parts. 70% is standard in most parts of Brazil. Why did India go down the ethanol route? As you know, India doesn't produce enough of its own oil. We have to import oil. So if you're watching what's happening with Trump and tariffs, a lot of the issues about the oil and the crude oil we are importing from Russia. India doesn't. India, last I checked, produces less than 10% locally produced of its own crude oil. So thus, we don't have enough of our own petrol also. So the reason for ethanol blending, that the government started ethanol blending, was to reduce our dependence on importing oil, not reduce it completely, but as oil consumption increased, as our economy grew and more people bought cars, motorcycles, whatsoever, you are blending a bit of ethanol over there. Um, so that was one reason. There are other reasons also. So energy security is a part of the reason. The other reason is India actually produces significant surplus of food grains. Farmers have assured prices thanks to MSP. And what do we do with that surplus food grain? Do we let it rot in FCI go downs? No, we don't. We use it to produce ethanol. One of the arguments against ethanol is why we're using sugarcane to produce ethanol. We actually don't use sugarcane juice to produce ethanol, using the dregs of the sugarcane, what is called B heavy and C heavy molasses. But there's some news on that item as well. But we are producing. So initially, India started with blending up to 10% ethanol in its fuel. Around soon after Narendra Modi came into power in 2014, and around 2019, it was said, let's try and get to 20% blending of ethanol by 2030. Now, what was done is that we have achieved that 20% of blending of ethanol by earlier this year, which was announced by Hardeep Puri. And that led to a lot of controversy because people say that such high blends of ethanol are ruining fuel economy and damaging their engines. There is an argument over there to be made, but something we'll get to further in this discussion. So I think, I put these in line. Now, just to clarify, I know Mr. Puri very well. I get the government's arguments on this. I also get the automotive industry's arguments on why too much ethanol blending isn't great. So I have a foot in both sides of the argument, and of course the third side as being a automotive writer as well, an enthusiast. So there's a third side of the argument. So I'll try and be as neutral as possible. People probably question, I'm pro-government or I'm pro-auto industry. I'm trying to be as neutral as possible. I love to have anybody who asks any questions they want to ask me. I'll try and answer it to the best of my ability.
So as I started researching for this, and I was telling you offline about it, what I found very interesting is that the issue is very variable. So there are three issues that I have understood. One is the impact on the engine itself. Now, in that, when I started looking at it, and correct me wherever I am wrong, I am asking you this as a question by sharing some information. So when I started looking up, Honda and Toyota cars are E20 compatible from 2009, is what I understood. So if you own a Honda or a Toyota in India, I'm talking about India, I don't know about anything else, you actually don't have a problem with E20 blending on your cars per se. But Hyundai is not compatible, so Hyundai would be a problem. Some models in Suzuki, as you rightly told me, were not compatible, and those are the cars that people are concerned about. Now, in that, what I have understood is that people are claiming that their mileage in their bikes and in their cars that are not E20 compatible has come down significantly. Now, I started looking at long-term studies. There is no long-term study done. There is no systematic study. वो क्या वो automotive guideline एक है government that is sticking to that. So that says there is a 5 to 7% drop in the overall fuel efficiency of the car. Now, fuel efficiency mein, Kushan, I had a question. As a driver, like let's say my father drives the i10, Hyundai i10. I have a Hyundai i10 2016 and I have a 2016 CRV. Funny enough, I bought two cars in 3 weeks. So I have two cars which are the same time range. Literally, it was very weird. So, when my dad drives the i10, he has a different way of driving. When I drive it, I have a different way of driving. There is a literal difference of one. Overall, in the average, my dad is a better driver than me from a fuel efficiency point of view, all things remaining equal. So how do we try to gauge this fuel efficiency argument? Because fuel efficiency cannot be directly pinned just on E20 blending. Again, I repeat, I believe there is a drop in fuel efficiency, but how do we gauge the number? Because जिसको बोलते हैं ना, ड्राइवर का हाथ अलग होता है, रोड कंडीशंस अलग होती हैं, पॉट होल्स अलग होते हैं, वेदर कंडीशंस अलग होती हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें होती हैं ना. So how do we do that? That's my first question.
Okay. If you remember your high school chemistry, no, sorry, Vidur. Oh, sorry, my son just entered the room. He's got me a glass of water. Thank you so much.
He's a good kid.
Very good kid. It's very interesting what I'm doing. So let's go to high school chemistry, something he will study in maybe 10 years' time. There's something called stoichiometry. Stoichiometry looks at the amount of energy produced from burning something. Petrol is a very energy dense liquid. Ethanol is not as energy dense as petrol. Ethanol has overall, say, 30% less energy. I mean, I don't know, have the exact number top of mind, but about 30% less energy than, so the equal amount of petrol and ethanol. So 1 liter of ethanol is 30% less energy dense than petrol. So when you're putting 20% of ethanol in a car, 5 to 7% of energy drop is just by the math. Now, at the same time, engines have become more efficient. You said both your cars are 2016 bought. Now, even the Honda engine, let's look at the Honda engine now on that car. It as engines, as they get newer and newer, you can have 0.5 or 1% efficiency increases every single year. Now, they do it in many ways, changing the swirl, changing the amount of fuel injected, all sorts of small changes. So the engine of 2016 to the engine of, say, 2025, you could have a efficiency change if you're using the same fuel of 5-10% just in technology alone. So now that is one aspect. So anyway, the other aspect is, yes, ethanol is less, because as I said, ethanol is less energy efficient, but a car maker can make modifications for E20. Now so there is that. So there's not been a huge efficiency drop on, say, a newer car. And you're absolutely right, haath chalane mein. So you never know, right? During Diwali week in Delhi, there's so much traffic, your fuel efficiency will drop. I mean, if you're commuting in Mumbai, as you know well, if you're stuck on the WEH, or you're in Bangalore and you're stuck on at Silk Board, you're not going to get any efficiency. If in fact, I would argue, if really fuel efficiency and cost per kilometer is your thing and you're driving a bit, buy an electric car or buy a CNG car. I mean, that makes the most sense. So there is that. Now, one argument that many people who are anti-blending are saying is that ethanol damages their engine. In older cars, that is to an extent true. So even E20 fuel. So why is the Honda and Toyota E20 compatible? Because the rubber parts, the plastic parts are compatible. Now, ethanol doesn't just corrode your liver when you drink it. Ethanol also corrodes plastic and rubber a bit. I mean, plastic is actually unique, but there's also it's also a petrochemical product, so it does tend to corrode. And there are lots of rubber gaskets, rubber parts, plastic parts in an engine. It's not just metal. So until your engine is actually E20 compliant, there can be damage to the rubber and plastics. Now, this is an easy fix. In terms of cost, it's not a very expensive fix. It's just a difficult fix. You have to send your car to the workshop, somebody's go to the engine and change all the parts. Some car makers like Maruti have said that they would be offering E20 kit for owners of older cars. So one of the major fuel efficiency, I mean, I saw stuff on social media, people saying we're getting a 20-30% drop. That is not stoichiometrically possible. It's not possible. You cannot say I'm getting, because again, if you're running on pure ethanol, your drop can only be about 30%. Just chemically, just by pure chemistry on that front. I'm not even going to get. So if you've got a 30% efficiency drop, get your engine checked. There could be carbon deposits in your engine. I mean, you should get your engine checked, really. So I do, and we've discussed this offline, I do have some opinions of what the government should do with ethanol. But some of the people who are, talking about ethanol being poison, and these are idiotic arguments. I mean, the government's been blessed and we talk about this with Narendra Modi and the leader of the opposition, the government's been blessed by idiots leading the anti-ethanol debate. So this is simply put the fuel efficiency part of the debate. Please carry on.
So yeah, again, you are not a spokesperson for Cast 24, but I don't understand. They did that video where they did that test and they showed that drop of 20% mileage. Yeah, dekh bhai, I am no spokesperson of the government here. I believe there is a 100% case that there is a mileage drop. I just did not buy that is because even I have a Hyundai i10 2016 model and I have not seen a mileage drop यार. एक अगर मेरी समझ ले मेरी गाड़ी भी पुरानी हो रही है वो भी तो फैक्टर इन करना पड़ेगा ना जितनी गाड़ी पुरानी होते जाती है उतना उसकी फ्यूल एफिशिएंसी भी तो इफेक्ट होगी and I have not seen a fuel efficiency drop in my car since we have shifted to E20 in my i10 of more than 1. So I don't know how they came up with a 20% figure. Like 5% to
I honestly
7% is
believe there was
exactly
some.
what I got. Exactly what I got.
No, so there were people who want to climb onto a bandwagon, right? Because there's money in that bandwagon. So they got into this argument. Again, if there is a 20, now to do a proper test, like in fact Autocar India has done. And I mean, Hormaz and I are friends at Autocar, and Hormaz told me what they were doing. They were doing proper research. They're doing the proper chemical tests. You know, they were doing spectrometry tests over here. I mean, they were actually seeing how much ethanol is in the blend. You can't assume. When the government is saying E20, that means max, right? So it means like just like say a 12-year-old Scotch, it means a minimum Scotch is 12 years old. You could have a 20 or excuse me. So it could also mean 18%, could be 17%, depends on how close you see at the refinery. Different companies, whether it's Geo or Indian Oil, or so that's there. So the people who are saying 20%, I would question them. How did you do your test? Where did you do your test? I don't trust you. I don't trust you. And you know, Cast 24 took that video down and people said, okay, what were the conditions of each test? Blah, blah, blah. So, you know, you can't say, I am getting it. You have to give scientific reasoning. You can't go by vibe, feel, you know, mahal bura hai, ye, wo. You cannot go by vibe. When you're doing something, you have to do it scientifically. And scientifically, the people who are cribbing, I mean, as I said, ethanol does corrode plastic and rubber parts. You can make ethanol proof plastic and rubber parts, which all these cars like Honda and Toyota have been doing since many years. They've been doing it. Other car makers did not, because boss, at the end of the day, they're bean counters. Okay, so if you have to make your car at E20 compliant and you have to spend $100 more, when you're certain car makers and you're making, you know, 200,000-300,000 cars a year, even $100 more adds up. So that's what happened. But you do scientific testing. You take two cars together, fill one up with say XP100 and fill the other. So you do these tests, or you fill it up with E10 fuel and then compare it to E20. Where are you getting E10 fuel from? Do you have a source? Lots of questions. So a lot of it was scaremongering. A lot of it was just engagement farming. And I don't believe those tests for sure.
So now, once again, I repeat, I believe the mileage drop is real. I not for 1 second
Yes,
buy
yes,
any argument that there
yes.
is no mileage drop. I just don't buy the
My
20 to
wife has
30% argument.
no, absolutely. My wife has an old Ford EcoSport. It's got a mileage drop. I can see it myself. All right. I'm not saying there isn't a mileage drop, but the
But
mileage drop is between 5 to 7% on an older car. On a
yes,
newer car, the mileage drop can be as low as 2 to 3% because, again, engines have become more efficient over the years. Maruti Suzuki's new Z series engine that you get in the new Swift and the new Desire is 10%, almost 12% more fuel efficient than the first generation K10 engine. So it's, I mean, which was less than 10 years ago. So it just happens. Engines also, I mean, just because the internal combustion engine is now what, almost 150 years old, doesn't mean they're improving it every year.
So
They're getting more
what are
power.
the we can do to solve these problems, like additives, fuel injectors, engine cleaning? What are those? Now let's talk about solutions, because listen, um, I think
Hmm.
the government, my biggest criticism of the government is not they got E20. My biggest criticism of the government is that they got E20 so fast, and while they got it so fast, they have not given E10 as an option to anyone. I just think it's unfair in a democracy. That's my criticism of the government. These are my views. But the point is, now we are where we are. Now let's talk about solutions. How do we, how, because there are people who have cars, who have bikes, who need solutions. So what are the practical solutions that can solve these problems?
Okay, let's first say the government has been hyper efficient over here. If the 2030 timeline had been met, I don't think we'd be talking about this as much. Okay, because most people would have bought new cars, new bikes. People who buy older cars, by then the cars would be going to the second hand, maybe even the third hand market, cars and bikes. What are solutions? Firstly, it's a problem if you leave. So blending, like, if you remember how liquids disassociate, I mean, separation happens when you keep something still for a long time. If you have two different liquids, you've seen the some cocktails, they can separate. So do run your cars a bit more often. Don't keep your car sitting around for more than a week. Just run the engine. So make sure it keeps on stirring up, right? Secondly, the big problem with ethanol, as anybody who drinks would know, um, ethanol is hydrochloric. It absorbs water. So, when you mix your scotch with water. Um, so again, keep it running. There is a that water issue we'll get to a bit more later as well. So the additives that you add, that you get offered in petrol pumps, run an additive in your engine. Maybe it's not a very expensive pouch, particularly if you have a performance car. Run it maybe once in a month, and make sure so it basically clears out the any water in the engine will absorb. And if you're getting massive drops in fuel economy, get your engine checked, get your engine cleaned. I mean, keep in mind, petrol itself isn't pure. There are impurities in petrol, and therefore, whenever you get you have carbon deposits. Particularly nowadays, you have very, very fine injectors and all of that. So if you're getting a significant drop, I mean, you could have got a significant drop in a petrol engine even a decade ago. At that point in time, you should clean your engine. Simple. There's no two ways about that. But run the pouch every once in a while. If you have a car, once a month, maybe in a two-wheeler, maybe even less. But make sure your car runs frequently. So make sure you start your engine, make sure the fuel is mixed up every once in a while. Otherwise, chances of separation are there. That is one solution. And when Maruti and possibly even Hyundai and Tata offer conversion kits from E10 to E20. All cars were E10 compatible. If they offer their conversion kits, go for it. So that'll make sure your plastic and rubber parts are changed and they won't get corroded.
So one more factor that I have realized. So I'll give you another example. This is common sense. The best thing my father taught me was that you have to constantly maintain your car all the time.
Mhm.
If you want, see, we are the kind of people, हम लोग गाड़ी लंबे समय तक रखते हैं. See, there are kinds
Mhm.
of people who change their car every 3 to 5 years for multiple reasons. They believe, say, keep on changing the car gets you better value for the car. I come from the school that I like to keep a car, because for me, car is as long as it serves my purpose, I'm going to keep it. Both my cars are almost 10 years old, 9.5 years old, and now I'm probably going to change one car. So everybody has a different mindset. But if you have a car that you are going to keep for a longer period of time, what I have noticed is, like, when you do proper maintenance, like a servicing every 3 to 6 months, your car gets maintained very well, and you actually get better long term results on your car. Your overall maintenance cost drops. And like small things I've noticed, people don't change their engine filters. Yeah, इंजन फिल्टर 2 से 3 साल में तो चेंज करना चाहिए, लोग चेंज नहीं करते, 10-10 साल वो काला भैंसा फिल्टर लगा के रखते हैं यार लोग.
No. Say, like, if you live in Delhi or North India for that matter, you should get an air filter change every once in a while because, unclean air isn't good for your car engine. I mean, in the end of the day, petrol and ethanol is being mixed with oxygen, right? And if the air is so dirty and your engine and your air filter is clogged, you don't need to service a modern car too often. And filters have become better. Oil filters have become better. Um, Once a year service is enough. But yeah, take care of your car. You're absolutely correct. You take care of your car. You can last for longer. It's all about the maintenance. As I said, cars have become better. They actually don't advise you to service it more than once a year. But some people don't service it at all, right? Change your filters, do everything properly, and you shouldn't have any trouble at all. So there is that. I
No, so
agree with
that one more question I had, which is your friend you mentioned, उन्होंने भी ये
Hormuz.
मेंशन किया था कि या हॉर्मस ने मेंशन किया था कि E20 fuel में, especially again people like me who tend to be away for longer periods of time. So this is more of a me question
Mhm,
because I live outside India for like five months, right, non-stop, and
mhm.
my car is just idle there. Other than my boy going and starting the car and neighbor car driver taking it for a 1 minute spin, the car really does not drive a lot. So one thing he said was that if you tend to not drive a lot, at least make sure your engine is full, like petrol tank is full. मतलब लोग अपना पेट्रोल कम रखते हैं, वो मिस्टेक है, आपको फुल टैंक रखनी चाहिए फुल टाइम. इज दैट द केस विद
Yes,
E20?
that is true. That's absolutely true because, um, one thing is, then what happens is the ethanol will sort of, there are issues over there, right? Because the way, again, there are different liquids, different rates of evaporation, all of that. So a full tank is always better in the long run. And again, do run your car at least, I mean, you said you're out of India for 6 months. Make sure your neighbor's driver runs it once a month, at least. I mean, just run it, yeah. Just take it around the colony and all of that. That's You don't have to do much. Honestly, my wife's car doesn't get used all that much. Now, I have to clarify. I personally do not own a car because I keep on getting cars to drive. But I, um, I completely agree with Hormaz over here. It's There are other things that Hormaz also pointed out in his videos. If you haven't watched them, do watch them. Um, Ethanol blended fuel also has a higher octane rating, so it's actually better for your car. It's in many ways, it runs cleaner in many ways. Again, use your car more often, and you shouldn't face much trouble. And do get your engine clean. Do get your filters changed every once in a while. If you have an old car, if you like driving your old car, you don't need to change your old car. Yeah, you'll have to face a little bit of efficiency drop. Now, one thing I think we discussed offline and you even agreed on earlier in the podcast was that should the government have also been selling E10 fuel? And I
Yeah,
think
that
that's
let's talk about that. Like, what was the government thinking? Are they that silly? Like सीधा मार दिया, एक यहाँ से सीधा वहां लेके चले गए. मतलब गवर्नमेंट को भी तो थोड़ी अक्ल होनी चाहिए ना.
government or a we don't know. But anyway, but I agree with you absolutely about that. I think E10 should have been left as a choice. You already have different supply chains. If one for diesel, one for standard petrol, one for XP95, one for XP100. Setting up a different supply chain for the large part would not have been a problem. I believe the government should have also incentivized people to move to E20 by pricing it lower than E10. Okay, so you want better petrol, you want not better petrol, you want more petrol or 10% petrol, then why don't you take the take give pay $10 more a liter? Simple, no issues over there. E10 should have been used. If you have an old car or you have an older performance car, or you have a Porsche or a Ferrari, you want to run E10, run E10. I mean, right now the only option is actually to run something called XP100 from Indian Oil or Power 100, whatever it's 100 octane fuel. But 100 octane fuel costs significantly more than standard petrols. I mean, in Delhi itself, I think it's almost a 30 buck difference on the higher octane fuel. So, yeah, I completely agree. E10 should have been given as an option, and make E20 cheaper. So, if you have a significant price difference, say of 5, 6, 7, 8 rupees, everybody would take the cheaper fuel, right? And if you allowed me to say modify my engine slightly and make it E20 compatible, everybody would have gone for it.
So are there E20 compatibility kits that you can add to your car to make your
Yes,
car
car makers are launching them. Maruti has said they'll be launching one. I believe other car makers are also going to follow. And you can change it at the time of service.
so now what about if somebody comes and says भैया आप तो upper middle class हो आप लोग इतनी सर्विसिंग करा सकते हो. Look, these are fair criticisms and fair uh, jibes in a country like India where a significant proportion of the population is very sensitive about price and kharcha. So uh, what do we do over there? Like वो बोलेगा कि भाई मैं नहीं करा सकता सर्विस हर 6 महीने, मैं साल में एक ही बार कराना अफोर्ड कर सकता हूँ.
No, service actually, see, on a two-wheeler is not that expensive. If it's a two-wheeler market, the majority of two-wheelers still run on petrol. Two-wheelers, you don't have diesel two-wheelers. The change right now is coming to electric two-wheelers, right? So I believe some two-wheeler manufacturers said they'll also come up with the E20 compatibility kit. Plus, on top of that, you should service your two-wheeler. As I said, vehicles don't need to be serviced more than once a year nowadays. They do not. So, most filters are better, most kits are better. So, I'm pretty sure that the E20 compatibility kit on a 100cc motorcycle will not cost more than a couple of hundred rupees. Okay, that could be a lot of money, I agree, for even somebody in that class, but it is what it is. I think the government should offer E10 fuel to assuage that class of person in particular.
Fair enough. Now I want to take a few questions that people have asked. So which company has the least blending? Yeah, petrol mein.
One, I think Autocar has an answer, but almost everybody has 18% plus now on standard petrol. So it's between 18 to 20% for everybody. So when the government has said it's achieved 20%, it was for everybody. So whether there's Geo, Naira, who are the private operators, all the way to Indian Oil and Bharat Petroleum and Hindustan Petroleum.
See, this if ethanol is cheaper, why is the petrol price not dropping for E20 blended petrol? See, if the government would have dropped the price, none of this bullshit would have happened.
That's a
No,
interesting
it's a
question.
fair
Does
criticism
government
of the
should drop the
government, man.
price?
The government, like, see, the problem with
I,
the government is
I
they feel they
completely
can
agree.
get away with anything.
And they do. Here's the thing. Actually, come on. In dollar terms, we aren't paying all that much for the crude. Also, getting stuff in from Russia. Even though now with everything that's going on, we might pay a bit more. But it's not dropping because we are overpaying for ethanol. Ethanol is not that expensive to produce, but the distilleries. Now, one line I heard from Hardeep Puri at one of our events we did on biofuels was Kisan has gone from being an Annadata to an Urjadata. Nice line. But, there's a huge agricultural and distillery based economy in India. And yeah, distillers of ethanol for blending are being paid a significant amount. We are paying almost 70 rupees a liter for ethanol that is blended into the petrol. So that's a lot. Then once you consider the margins for the oil companies and the margins for the petrol pump and transportation costs, the government can't really drop its price. We are overpaying for ethanol to the distilleries. That I think that is one major reason. I know ethanol doesn't cost that much to produce, but yeah, if you look at who owns the distilleries, that's a different debate altogether.
All right. So, problem not with ethanol blending, but with zero alternatives for older engines and an unplanned rollout lacking coordination with manufacturers and insurance companies. Why roll out early? It's a fair question again.
Question, absolutely fair question. I don't know why the government was in a hurry. E10, you should have been moving towards E10 to E20, rolling out early. Okay, happened for two reasons primarily. One, massive food grain surplus in India. Two, uh, people put in a lot of money into distilleries. Right now, there was a story that came out today. We have almost a 70% oversupply of 70% more capacity for ethanol production for blending than we require. The government has also said no more reducing the amount of sugarcane based ethanol for blending, more grain. Um, and in fact, in the future, we won't be even using too much grain. We're moving to stuff like bamboo and other biomass. But again, that's a different thing we can talk about. It happened too fast. I agree. It happened too fast. I think we should have had a E10 option. I'm repeating that again and again for older cars. Why roll out early? We had too much food grain. We had to use it somehow. We had to do something about it. We do not have a food grain crisis in India right now. In fact, from one thing I understand, the Trump administration wants to sell us ethanol from their corn or their soybean. They want to sell us ethanol as well. There is going to lead to even more problems with the distillers in India. Um, but I expect as more cars are bought, all these new cars that were sold during this entire festive season, these are all E20 compatible. The government is hoping this becomes a non-issue in, say, 2 years' time.
Yeah, I just government can hope what it's hope, but in a democracy, people have a right to come
Yeah, yeah,
question
for
the
sure,
government.
for sure.
And some of the responses from some sections of the BJP, I'm naming them again, not your words, mine, have been abominable. Like the apology was ridiculous. This is not how you engage with people.
No,
You
not at
you
all.
engage with them by listening to them and try to explain to them.
And here's the funny part, right? I mean, even those of us who are slightly sympathetic to the government and even
Yes.
sympathetic to why this has happened, there was no outreach done to us. I mean, I know Hardeep Singh Puri personally, but he told me stuff. I was asking, but why didn't you tell? You reached out to your oil and gas beat correspondents. You did not reach out to the automotive media in one bit. You should have reached out to us. You should have reached out to me. I mean, Hormaz is doing what he's doing. He's explaining what he's explaining on his own accord. And that is true of other automotive journalists, whether it's Sirish at Evo or Siddharth at, at AcoDrive and others. We've all doing this and explaining this to our viewers and our readers because we want to. We haven't been paid money. We've not had outreach from the Oil and Gas Ministry or the MORTH. They should have reached out to us. They reached out to some influencers and all that, but the best automotive influencers are automotive journalists. And I think there was none, there was nothing done, even to the proper, the guys who are proper influencers in this. We understand the debate. We understand, we might not have done chemistry beyond high school. Some people haven't even done chemistry in plus two, but we understand the chemistry. We understand the physics of all this. Um, you know, Reach out to us, explain why you've done this to us. We'd have your questions. We could have even told you what to do. And you think we have a great time. We travel the world. We drive fancy cars, but we also look at policy matters like this. And nothing. Outreach was. I mean, this was after Sindoor. This was another PR disaster that could have been avoided.
Absolutely. And you know what? Like, if you explain properly, people will understand. And
No,
there
for
are
sure.
ways, and yeah, and a simple thing. If the fuel efficiency and overall cost calculation could have been done just flatline, reduce the petrol prices and just finish the added cost. And it ends there. But
No,
ठीक है.
absolutely agree. You could have explained. You can explain the concept of energy security to people. I'm just hearing that. I mean, thankfully, I mean the Trump administration is doing a better job of explaining energy security to Indians than the government itself.
Yeah.
Don't buy oil from Russia, and like why the hell shouldn't we buy oil from Russia? It's good for us. Um, I mean, again, I mean, yeah, things could have been handled better. And explain energy security. Explain what to do with the excess food grain, man. What do you do with the excess food grain? Do you let it rot? Do you let it rot? What do you do with it?
Yeah. So does CNG affect engine design for petrol? Does it?
No, all CNG cars are there is special tubing done for CNG vehicles. So all CNG vehicles have slightly different plumbing in the engine, and they don't impact petrol. But all CNG cars are essentially bi-fuel cars. They can all run on petrol as well. So you don't need to worry if you run out of CNG on the road. You can always fill petrol. So there's that.
Okay, so this is interesting. Do E20 or E10 blends damage engines of old or antique vehicles?
Vintage cars, okay. Older vehicles. I mean, I've been talking to say one of my friends, Cyrus, who is heads up the old Fiat car club of Mumbai. He's got all the classic Fiats from the 60s. um, Cyrus, I mean, you should talk to the. I mean, if you know a lot of, I mean, in the automotive journalism industry, you tend to know a lot of Bawas, and they all love classic cars. Again, so a couple of my friends have older 911s and Ferraris. No, the answer is again, if you maintain your engine well, there should not be damage. Old or vintage cars don't get run very often. You're not running them every day. Even if you're using an old 1930s car as a daily drive, good for you. But most people over there, people who own older vintage cars, they tend to live in cities where there's also 100 octane XP100, which is zero blended, no ethanol in it at all, um, can be made. If you have a vintage car, I'd probably be filling 100 octane fuel from Indian Oil or Bharat Petroleum, or all the major companies have 100 octane fuel petrol. Um, if you have a classic car in an upcountry place, you may be out of luck, but most classic or vintage cars are in major cities. Unless you live in Mangalore or Mysore. I mean, that belt has a lot of classic cars.
All right. So the Obama administration's flex fuel program let automakers design engines using gas, ethanol, or blends. After a decade, the EPA found e-fuels raise CO2 emissions. Today, the maximum blend allowed is E15.
Okay, very interesting question, actually. Shaz. Yes, ethanol is a bit more carbon inefficient from the tailpipe. That is true. However, in the production of ethanol, and the higher the blend of ethanol, when you consider from a life cycle point of view, ethanol is more efficient than petrol in terms of, because ethanol is using biomass. That biomass is going to, once you use the biomass, you can use it as fertilizer. Even more efficient than ethanol is something going to be coming out. You're going to hear in this word a lot called CBG, which is compressed biogas, not compressed natural gas. CNG is going to be blended into CNG going forward. So that's going to hearing that a lot also. But biofuels are, by their nature, they do suck out some carbon out of that. So from a carbon life cycle point of view, um, some of these blends are a bit worse from tailpipe emissions point of view. And I think the government's also redoing the CAFE norms for carbon emissions for this. You have to do some, you have to adjust that. But from a life cycle point of view, the way I understand it currently, and I've been explained this by multiple people, ethanol and CBG and all biofuels, other than sustainable aviation fuel, which is a bit of a fraud, are better for the environment from a carbon point of view in the life cycle scheme. So again, you don't just look at tailpipe emissions by themselves. Um, in the early days, electric cars, while clean, zero tailpipe emissions, battery electrics, were worse for the environment when you consider production, and all the carbon cost was negative, was worse than on a petrol vehicle. That is changing. That's changed to a large part right now. But um, you shouldn't just measure solely tailpipe emissions.
Fair enough. Before we wrap up, now we are where we are. E20 is here. We are
Mhm.
where we are. The government needs to stop their dreams of E27 as of now. पहले
Yes.
गाड़ियों को फेज आउट करो. बस हो गया भाई, माफ कर दे भाई, अभी जो हो गया हो गया. Now you have a bike, you have a car that is old. What are the final closing comments? What are the steps that I need to take to make sure um, that, and somebody has asked this, please also ask regarding the impact of e-mixing on Indian agricultural market, shift to more corn monocultures, fuel cost feedback since crops use fertilizer, price volatility. So I think this is not concerned with our car.
No, I do have an issue over here. I know what if your viewer is
Hmm,
asking.
hmm,
He's asking what impact will that have for food security? I mean, it's a roundabout way of asking it.
hmm,
Monoculture is corn monoculture. Should we be going down there? Okay. A lot of ethanol produced. I have a very close friend who produces ethanol near Bhubaneswar. He's supplying it to the Paradeep refinery. Um, he is using a lot of broken rice from that region. So a lot of the rice, of course, you grow basmati up north, but a lot of the rice grown in East and South India isn't the same high quality. They're using that rice. What is really interesting are what is called Gen 2 ethanol, Gen 2 biofuels. And so there's this company in Assam that is producing ethanol from bamboo. Bamboo is fast growing, particularly in the wet part of the world, like the northeast of India, where bamboo just grows like a weed. It is a weed, and you're using bamboo to produce ethanol. Bamboo has no issues with food grain at all because we don't eat. I mean, okay, so you might like bamboo shoots in your Chinese food, but um, so they're using bamboo over here. So I don't think they'll have much impact on the agricultural market. There are slight impacts. I mean, again, the minister told me, Annadata se Ujjadata. Farmers will, of course, change the cropping use. We might move to more corn. I mean, there are issues over there. This cannot be looked solely as a single point. We'll have to modify. See, as Gen 2 ethanols are being produced, we're using them from biomass. I mean, when the monsoons happen, you've seen how much greenery grows. What do you do with that greenery when you cut those trees on the roadside verge? What do you do with that? Can you produce ethanol or biogas from there? Yeah, there. So again, a very simplistic answer. I'm sorry, but the best I can do for right now. I mean, a lot more study has to happen on this. Uh,
all right.
as as for what you were asking, I think if I have an older car, if I have a pre 2023 car, which is often 2023, all cars are E20 compatible. Okay. If I have a pre 2023 car, some manufacturers, they rightly mentioned Honda and Toyota cars are all E20 compatible. In fact, many BMW cars in India from I think 2020 onwards are E25 compatible. So that is not so there's no problem. I think same with Mercedes. Um, so no problems over there at all. Um, if your car is not E20 compatible, do put the additive once a month whenever you tank your car up. As we said earlier, as you're absolutely correct, um, keep your car tanked up if you're going to leave it around. And again, run your car. If you don't run it every day, run your car as often as possible. And if you don't want to have any issues with ethanol at all, drive an electric car. That's the best way around it. If you don't want to debate ethanol, uh, I like driving electrics. I just find them very weird because they're silent. But yeah, so these are my points of feedback. Sorry, Kushal, I interrupted you.
No, no, no problem. So, like I said, My closing comments are the government should have given an E10 option. They've not. If they've not, the least they can do is, make people happy by dropping the petrol prices or something of that sort. So that, but considering now that we are not going to get cheaper Russian oil because Trump has sanctioned the companies now, and now with the companies getting sanctioned, that changes the scenario because India doesn't buy sanctioned oil.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Uh, Keep in mind, there is a very large loophole in this entire sanctions game.
Oh,
That loophole is called the United Arab Emirates. So everything is going through Dubai. So it's
ये दुबई का मजा है, साला बैठा रहता कुछ बनाता नहीं है, सब उधर से घुमाते रहते हैं चीजें.
absolute maza. So all the Russians have moved to Dubai. All the transfers are happening through Dubai. So Iran's been selling crude through Dubai for the longest time. The Russians are going to do the same. Um, Trump's sanctions have so many loopholes and exemptions. They're not really. So India will say, okay, stop, we sorry buying from Russia, but they start buying more from UAE. The UAE doesn't have that much oil. I mean, Abu Dhabi has some. But yeah, I mean, it's like,
nothing is going to really change other than thoda bahut price differential hoga 2 to 5% ka, and I think the
absolutely.
government will absorb it. And I believe if the government wants to make all these old car people and bike people happy, just 1-2 रुपया petrol का price गिरा दो, लोग खुश रहेंगे.
No. Right now, the oil marketing companies are making money. I mean, keep in mind during one of the silliest arguments I hear from the Congress types, oh, Manmohan Singh never raised the price of petrol. He almost crippled oil marketing companies. Right now, the OMCs have a lot of money. They can easily drop the price of fuel. But again, your fuel taxes, excuse me, they are paying for the drop on GST rates. They're paying for the drop on income tax rates. They are financing the economy on the whole.
Yeah, and मगर पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स तो अभी भी जीएसटी के उसके बाहर है ना, वो तो स्टेट
But
लेवल
I'm
पे.
saying that because the GST cards, where does the government raise money from? You sold 125,000 cars on Dhanteras, lower GST rate. So some money has to come from somewhere, right? So those cars are going to run on petrol. So the government's hoping for higher petrol sales. So do you want the OMCs to have a margin?
All the new cars are E20 compatible.
They're all E20 compatible. So yeah.
So at least that is the saving grace. But Kushan, thank you very much as always for
Thanks.
coming on the pod. Thanks,
And
buddy.
I'm going to enjoy my ethanol. So yeah.
All right, guys. तुम्हें जितना
It's a
नितिन
Friday night. You should enjoy ethanol, guys. All of you in India, it's a Friday night. So yeah, have your drink. If your car doesn't want ethanol, definitely I think you do.
Yeah. So guys, go follow Kushan on Twitter. His Twitter handle is there. Also, a lot of his writing links are there in the description of the
That's
podcast. Go check all his work out. And you know the drill. The Cārvāka podcast only runs on membership or one-time donations. So whether it's a donation through UPI, Interac Canada, or joining the membership on YouTube or on Patreon, please check out all the links in the description of the podcast. You can also like this video right away and subscribe to the Cārvāka podcast YouTube channel if you have not. Leave a rating on your preferred audio platform if you are an audio listener. I still believe the government was wrong in not keeping E10 as an option, and that criticism of the government is fair. Now we are where we are. So I hope the government drops the petrol prices at least and compensates people who are having that fuel efficiency loss or that long-term engine damage loss. I'm not really convinced on the engine damage loss, but on the fuel efficiency, I am convinced. So I'll see you guys next time. Until then, namaste. Take care.